The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to the Bite by Bite. He's Michael Coleman, CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, HAFB.org. And of course, you can hashtag that as well. He joins us every single week talking about the different things that go on in not only Feeding America, but the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. And today we want to talk about food banking in emergencies and disasters. And it doesn't seem like we can go a couple of days without something happening, whether it's a hurricane in Acapulco, whether it's wildfires. We even had a situation in Maine where we had, which I thought you brought up a great point, an active shooter situation where people are trying to stay put. Well, not everyone can stay put. They got to go out and get food. What if it happens for a week or two? Talk a little bit about that today, Michael.
Yeah, so of course, Feeding America, just to orient people, if you're a new listener, has over 200 food banks, with every county in the United States being assigned to one of those food banks, partner food banks, and so part of the role that we have that almost nobody is aware of is the food bank network's role in disaster relief when it happens. And so here in Alabama, as you know, Tony. We have all sorts of stuff. So we have hurricanes that can come up from the Gulf of Mexico, but we really suffer from tornadoes every year. Yep. Tornadoes are touching down, and we've had some pretty intense ones the last few years. And so a third of the city of Selma, which is already a heavily impoverished area, tornado comes through, knocks down houses. Now you have to think about this. Everybody thinks, well, yeah, it's your house gets torn down by a tornado. Yeah, it's a house, so you move into your insurance moves you into a hotel, whatever, and then you just rebuild. Well, a lot of these houses are houses that have been passed down. They're close to being dilapidated. I'll just say low-income housing that have been owned now, paid off, and people don't have the money. I mean, they're not covered in insurance either because they can't be held up to a certain standard. So this isn't just as simple as, oh, my roof got blown off. My roof got blown off, and now this house is totally useless because I don't have the money. And now I'm out on the streets with no food, no water, or whatever. So one of the things that we do is through the Feeding America Network, and our food bank is certainly part of that, is we carry in stock shelf-stable, like truckloads of water, a couple truckloads of water we have in our reserve. We have easy opening things, things you don't have to cook, shelf-stable items that you could pop tab kind of stuff. And it's just so important because when you think about if you're looking and maybe many in our audience have resources, maybe you have a family you can go to or whatever, but there's so many people that the house gets blown away or a tree falls over or whatever, and you're like, that's it. I mean, I've got nothing in the bank and I have nowhere to go. And FEMA can help in some regards, but sometimes FEMA's not on the ground for 3 or 4 days. Yeah. And so who fills in those gaps? And that's the role of the food bank, is we cover down our local gaps. So when that happened, I reached out to Selma Area Food Bank, which is contracted with me, with the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, and we reached out and said we started taking reports, and we started working with the state volunteer agencies and volunteer fire departments, and where you just see the best of America, which is when tragedy happens, people rally to people, and it's so encouraging, and that's what it feels so good about working, because that what we're bringing is things that just people don't have, but you have to have to survive. It's not like, well, I may not drink any water today, or I may not drink, eat any food. These are vital things just for survival. And imagine how much more difficult it is to navigate these tragedies that happen when you don't even know literally where your next drink of water is coming from.
How do you know if an area, you obviously know what your coverage area is, and I guess you're just responsible for that cover area, but I mean, is it something that's up to your responsibility just to go out and cover that immediately? Do you get a phone call from someone that says, hey, listen, we need 2 trucks from your food bank? How does that work?
Yeah. So, most people are familiar with weather radars and and those kind of things. And so when we know that a storm's coming, we listen to the weather, local weather that's showing potential reports of tornadoes. And then what we do is, so in our particular network, we have over half the state, but I have 4 smaller food banks called affiliated food banks that are tied into us. And so if one's coming to Tuscaloosa or one's coming to Auburn area, or, I just contact them and say, hey, of course you're aware a tornado is in your area of coverage. Please be aware, notify your agencies. Hey, if it touches down, then we have to do an assessment real quick, because it might go through somebody's farmland, and it might knock a barn down, and it may be really bad, but it doesn't affect the population. But when it hits towns, communities, we've had one that just went down a street, and it was a very rural area, but it went down the street and just wiped out the houses down on that one street. So we're focused on getting food there. And lots of times we don't know until we're actually on the ground a true report. All we know is, hey, some houses were destroyed here. And then we kick in action because you've got FEMA at least begins to take reports with volunteer state agencies, the news, all the emergency medical systems, they all come together and start working together. What's vital about what we do is they're all gathering data like, well, how many houses, who's affected? Here comes a truckload of water and food. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily always have the numbers. We're going to be the first on the ground. If we can get a vehicle there, if we can get access to that area, we just want to start distributing food. And it's not just sometimes food to those who are victims, but it's the volunteers out there who need water and sometimes food and all that to be able to care for those who are doing that. So it's such an important role. And Feeding America puts a lot of time and effort in that. We do as well, storing our warehouse and making sure that food and water is current and it stays fresh and updated. But just most people say, I had no idea that y'all had anything to do with that, because the average person doesn't know enough about food banking, doesn't know the role we play. And this is just one role that is so vital, because if we weren't here, you would get people on the ground that would clear trees and do all that. Where is the food coming from? Where's the water? Some of these vital things. And I'll just throw in one more thing. This was not a weather-related thing, but we had one in one of our impoverished counties, Macon County, and a storm ended up having some flood and some things backed into the sewage. Well, it ended up affecting the whole water supply that they had to shut it down for 2 or 3 days. So it was weather-related in that it caused some flooding. But sometimes you'll have, we had a bridge collapse in one of our counties, and when it collapsed, it broke the entire pipe system, the water system. Wow. So half the county was cut off from water for 4 or 5 days. Again, the food bank comes to help deliver that, and we have to have those supplies on hand, monitored, ready to go. It's not like, oh, yeah, I'll order a truckload of water and it'll be here in a week. So sometimes when I'm talking to the audience, that when you get these solicitations with the food bank, it's not just feeding our hungry neighbors, which is vital, and that's our primary job. But just keep in mind, we're also there in the middle of the fight when emergencies come about to take care of our community as well. When natural disasters come about.
There's a natural disaster right around the corner almost every single day. It seems like not just around the world, but certainly here in Alabama. Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, go to hafb.org. And if you want to reach out to me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn very easily. Send me a message. I always try to encourage people, if you don't have a food bank or a relationship and you find this podcast helpful and you want to support what we're doing, it's great. It's needed. We battle through several tornadoes every single year, and that's just one aspect of what we do. But if you're like, well, I want to give something, look, I just want to encourage you to get involved with your local food bank, volunteer, go down and get a tour, become an advocate for what we're doing, and understand the great challenges that exist with children in poverty, senior in poverty, who oftentimes are going hungry, and it's behind the scenes that we don't see. We know statistically it's happening, but sometimes when we have enough, we just block our minds off. We don't want to think about those who don't have enough. But we don't have that luxury. We're in this fight to make sure that every hungry child and every hungry senior get what they need. And of course, we need everybody's help to do that.
You've been watching Bite by Bite with Michael Coleman and Tony Kurre here on TKR.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.